Thank you so much. I think the reason this award means so much to all of the people who win this is that it shows a recognition, a fulfillment of our life journey in journalism that we put everything into. My own journey in journalism began in the year 2000 when I arrived in Mexico City with a backpack and a one-way ticket. And I had a dream of being a journalist like the ones I had seen covering the civil wars of Central America, running with the Che Guevara-inspired guerrillas against the military dictatorships. But I found that era had finished. I arrived the day before the former Coca-Cola executive, Vicente Fox, took office in Mexico, ending 71 years of one-party presidential rule, and Mexico had its own dream of democracy and prosperity and human rights. And if you can cast your mind back to that year 2000, perhaps with some nostalgia, that was an era when this was the global hope, the end of history, democracy and human rights everywhere. So I reported on this moment in Mexico, getting a job with the Houston Chronicle, and soon I got sent to cover a drug turf war in the border city of Nuevo Laredo, over the border from Laredo, Texas. We thought it was more of the same gang violence, but there were corpses turning up. And there was an old school newspaper battle among the Texas newspapers to find out what was going on. In those days, we didn't have security protocols. I would just fly up to Monterrey, rent a car, drive to the border, and hang out in the city by myself. And I found a way in by making friends with some of the drug users and drug addicts in the city. I had some experience of that because I grew up in the UK in the 80s around a lot of drugs. A heroin epidemic back then, and 4 of my friends dying of heroin overdoses. It's crucial to cover these links between communities that consume drugs, like the one that I grew up in, and the places that produce and traffic drugs. So I was covering Nuevo Laredo, and the violence escalated. A man I interviewed, Alejandro Domingos Cuello, became chief of police and was shot dead 6 hours after he swore into office. I found myself reporting on houses packed with kidnapped victims and shootouts between the federal police and local police. And I realized this was not more of the same gang fights. I was covering a moment of change in history. This was a transformation in the type of violence, as instead of being the gangbangers with shaved heads and tattoos and pistols, you had paramilitary organized crime. Former soldiers with AK-47s, metal helmets, bulletproof vests and radios. And this sea change that started in Nuevo Laredo would sweep across Mexico and destabilize the country. It has led to tens of thousands who disappeared and hundreds of thousands of deaths. And in my years in Mexico, more than 150 of our journalist colleagues have been murdered. I found myself covering things I could never have imagined. Mass graves of almost 300 bodies next to family homes, a massacre of 72 migrants, and Mexico's dream of a new democratic era had turned into a bloody nightmare. So I did find myself covering a type of war like the people I'd looked up to. But instead of Che Guevara's, it was Chapo Guzman. Instead of military dictatorships, it was democratic presidents with soldiers carrying out massacres. I met too many of the victims who lived their personal tragedies. A mother in Monterrey, a school teacher who had seen her son, an 18-year-old philosophy student, dragged away by gunmen and was searching for years for him with no closure. I got to the villains, the demons, the drug cartel traffickers, the hitmen. But they also have their own stories. And you find the line between good and evil runs through every human heart. And I found heroes. And some of those heroes are in this room, the Mexican journalists who carry on reporting the news despite violence and murder and intimidation.
Bravo!
So now we are in 2022 and these are tough times. That dream of democracy and human rights is dying as a global project. And it's dying in Mexico. Violence is raging, but it no longer makes global news because people are used to it. The president in Mexico is constructing a new type of military-industrial complex. And we have at least 15 journalists killed in Mexico this year alone. And there's a new opioid epidemic in the United States, much worse than the one I was growing up with 100,000 dead from overdoses in a single year last year. We don't even know what our dreams are anymore. But history has cycles, and we will find ourselves at the beginning of new sea changes. This status quo will not last. New dreams will be reborn, and if we can come back to this room in another 20 years, we can hope it will not be to lament mountains of corpses. It will not be to lament 15 colleagues killed in a single year. That would be over, that would be history. Thanks so much to Columbia University. Thanks so much to my family, especially my wife, Miriam, has always supported me. And to our trade, la verdad nos hará libres.
Bravo!